Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. How are you, my loves? Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am Tayla Andre. Waking up with Tayla Andre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day we linked up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. Today is the day that the Lord hath made, and I am rejoiced, even though I am not glad. So I'm super annoyed that just what's going on in the world. Woosa. The question for today, and we'll go ahead and get into your comments, is how on earth do you suggest we alter reform, police reform, and or criminal justice reform when we just witnessed, I don't know if you watched the video, but this young man, Kyle, was walking around with an AR-15, and while walking around, him and another, this group of militia that were protecting buildings were asked by the police, do you guys want any water? Thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate you. Like, damn near gave him the green light to shoot and kill. Like, we appreciate what you're doing. How do we reform? How do we reform? What suggestions, what would you do? And you don't have any criminal background, or maybe you do. I just want to know I have ideas. I think they're logical ideas. I think it's going to cost money. It's not going to be free. I think it's worth it. And lives are being taken. I read an article that said that you cannot count on one hand how many days pass before police shoot and kill someone else. I feel at this point, like, they don't even need deadly weapons right now. Like, their deadly weapons should be taken from them because they clearly do not know how to restrain themselves. Period. My soul hurts. I declared that I am no longer watching videos of Black people being killed, because if you go back 70 years, there were lynching postcards. And so once upon a time, when a Black man was lynched, when a Black man was burnt at the stake, there were photographs, and these photographs were turned into postcards, and these postcards were sold for up to $1. And I feel like we keep posting these videos trying to awaken an empathy in an enemy that thought once upon a time it was amazing to take these pictures and share them with our friends. If you don't believe me, do your due diligence. Go Google Black man lynching postcards and just look at the images. There's also a documentary of these postcards that have been circulated that were part of memorabilia that were sold, and you can find them along with like slave shackles. You can also find them with in the documentary, there was a pair of shoes that was made out of the skin of a Negro. And so I am interested in what we, the people, like the conversation that we had yesterday. I am a tax-paying citizen. You literally take money out of my pocket, out of the mouths of my children, while turning around and using that money to purchase weapons, to pay officers to turn around and kill my brother. My money, my tax-paying dollars. You are a public servant. And I think we have completely given away all of our power to these public servants that are beholden to us. Because of us, they get paid. Because of us, you get paid. Because of us, you get overtime. Because of us, your family's making $100,000 a year. So if your money is being made out of my pocket, you don't think for 5 seconds that I have the right to speak out, speak up, and demand change? I'm super annoyed. I'm super frustrated. And I don't want to talk about the problem anymore. We've been talking about the problem, as long as I've been alive, it's been a problem. This isn't new information. This isn't, this behavior is not new of the police. And recently I read an article that is like decades and decades old of a police officer's account of this, militia that started the Boston police. And they were speaking about how there were these Native Americans that were coming into the city of Boston. And like Native Americans, I don't own anything, right? It's like whatever is here is for everyone. So if you want to pick the corn, it belongs to you. And so it was like these natives in the middle of the night come in to the city, or at the time the town, come into the town and they start taking whatever they want. And so the Boston police was initially started because Native Americans were like, yo, this land is my land, this land is your land, you F my stuff up, I'm taking it back. And a second part of the article was just like, there's Negroes that are leaving their master's house in the middle of the night. And so they were slave catchers. And so the Boston police started, don't believe me, go do your due diligence. The Boston police started because they wanted law and order over the black man. And whether he was a Native American black man, because if you truly know your history, you know the Native Americans are black. Or whether he was an indigenous man from America, or whether he was brought here off of a slave ship. The numbers just don't add up for me. And I truly believe that a lot of the slaves that we claim that were once upon a time enslaved, the people that were enslaved weren't necessarily all from Africa. Like there were actually people that lived here in America. But if we claim that narrative, we then have to give reparations back to millions of families. And so if we're able to control it and say, hey, you have to prove you have this type of blood. And if you prove that you have this type of blood, then we'll give you a number. Then you can go stay on the reservation and you don't need nothing from us, and, do what you do. And if you know anything about the reservations here in America, they are constantly fighting for their land. They are constantly fighting for their rights. They are constantly fighting for, and mind you, when we segregated the natives, we gave them the worst possible land. We gave them land that you cannot farm on. We gave them land that cattle cannot eat. We gave them land, we gave them the BS. So the same thing that they were feeding to the then slaves, the chitlins, the, fatback, the ears, the tails, the chicken feet, and the pig feet, the pig nose. And you wonder why today, while grandma's over here eating pickled pig feet. Going back to yesterday's conversation, it's the generational. I don't know if you guys were paying attention, but one of the stories that I will forever tell, Dr. Atia Martin, thank you so much for your wisdom, is about the grandmother and the daughter and the mom. And the mom's making ham and she's cutting the butt off the ham and putting it in the pan. And so while she's cooking, her daughter's like, Mom, why did you cut the butt off the ham? And she's like, baby, I don't know. Grandma used to do it and I watched grandma do it, so I do it. And so they're like, let's call grandma and ask her why she cuts the butt off the ham. And they call, Grandma, why you cut the butt off the ham? She said, baby, because the pan was too small. And so here we are in 2020 doing the things that our ancestors did without understanding, without knowledge, without, the wherewithal, that we're no longer in that space and we can do things differently. So what do we need to do differently? Like the Boston police specifically, because that's where the police departments of America began. And so let's, start this conversation here in Boston and say what changes need to be made in order for us to move forward and to be more progressive. And even though, quote unquote, Boston police ain't out here killing folks, we do have to, acknowledge the fact that they are roaming the streets, throwing people in jail for misdemeanor offenses. And if it wasn't for Rachel Rollins, we would have more of our men in jail than actually men and women, because I cannot leave out the fact that there are millions of our incarcerated women that are behind bars for Black women that are behind bars for charges that would be a minor infraction to a white woman. And so what suggestions do we have on how to change this? How do we change the structural racism that persists within our police departments? And shout out to James Mackey, who was here yesterday, #Enough Friday, tomorrow at 3:30 at the State House. Enough is enough. But where exactly, okay, enough's enough. I'm yelling, I'm screaming, I'm protesting. No, enough is enough. But what's the next steps? What are the action items? What are your demands? What do you want to see? What is the changes that need to be made in order for our children to have a safer life? And you have to understand, like, once upon a time, I was so excited that Oprah was like, we just need to let racism die. But if you look at today's climate, if you take a look at President Donald Trump, at how old he is and how old his children are and how his children move, and his children are having children. So even though Donald J. Trump is going to die soon because of his age, he still passed down those ideologies to his children and to his grandchildren. And there's millions of other families, whether they're in the South, whether it's in the North, whether it's covert or overt, whether it's in your face blatant racism, which you will see in the South, or whether it's Northern racism, where it's just like, hey, Tayla, how you doing? I hate that black beat. So, and I honestly, that's how I feel about Democrat and Republican. For me, a Republican is just like, I don't like Negroes, those colored folks, where a Democrat is just like, the black man is not to be trusted. It's like you're saying the same thing, but in a different patois. The South is going to tell you the truth and exactly how they feel. That's the Republican. And the North is going to act like you are buddy, friend. Let's do what we can to, kumbaya. But behind closed doors, I'm doing everything I can to sabotage everything you are, period. And so Kasem said, okay, I get it. So what do we make aware of this to our boys? Do you think promoting trauma and victimhood is already traumatizing to a black boy? Can I tell you that my son is 17 years old and he's been traumatized for years. Like, he is scared to death that he won't make it to his 18th birthday. Aside from being scared to death that he won't make it to his 18th birthday, he is traumatized for his friends. He's traumatized when his friends leave my house to make sure that his friends get home. He's mindful of when they're in the streets versus where, like, my son is 17 years old and traumatized, and I hate that I am forever having the same conversation with him. Like, you can't do the things that your cousins do. You can't just go out. I have a 2-year-old son who is a black boy. I personally, and this sounds absolutely insane, I personally do not let him play with guns. I have nieces and nephews that have all types of guns and Nerf guns and this gun and air guns. And no. I don't want you playing with this because I don't want you to think it's a toy, because at 12 years old, you could be Tamir Rice. Nah, not this one. I'm a little frustrated and I'm a little annoyed. And I say this knowing that there's going to be repercussions to my actions, but I don't understand how a mother can, like, I'm telling you right now, I'm Asada Shakur. I'm blowing up the police department. I'm finding the officer that specifically did something to my child, and then I'm off this. I don't know how, like, maybe they talk about that strength, forgiving your enemies. There is no forgiveness for me for that. To be shot and you're, after breaking up a fight, you're over here de-escalating the same thing that the police is supposed to be doing. You're de-escalating a situation, and while de-escalating the situation, you're being attacked for what it is that you're doing. Like, you're doing the right thing, you're being attacked for doing the right thing, and then they turn around and shoot you. Like, I'm reading all of these comments, and the comments was like, well, if he would have just comply. No, there is no complicit. I'm not going to be complicit when I wasn't doing anything wrong. You're not taking me to jail. You're not wasting my time. You're not wasting my money, because then now I have to go to jail, defend myself, bail myself out, go to court, pay for a court-appointed attorney. If you don't have an attorney, one will be appointed to you, but they don't tell you that you have to pay for that. That's not free. They hit you with a bill. So now, not only do I have a record, it's now on my quarry. I was taken to jail, taken away from my family. But if it was a white man, you'd sit here and have a full conversation with me and ask me, yo, what was going on? What happened? We know the problems. We know the issues. The question is, what do you suggest? You are the taxpayer. You are paying these people to kill us. What are your demands? And I think that's the thing that frustrates me so much, because I'm sick and tired. What the hell are you going to protest for? I'm not holding up a sign. I'm not protesting. I'm not talking about how angry I am and how frustrated I am. You already know how angry and frustrated I am, because if it was your brother, if it was your sister, you'd be pissed too. We shall overcome. I'm sick and tired. Yo, I'm waiting for people to get so mad that they retaliate. Like, it's time for retaliation. Because if you take a look at history, only history, not Tayla's emotions, not Tayla's feelings, not my opinion. If you look at history, y'all don't understand nothing but violence. It's going to take for you to get your ass whooped before you're going to sit down, shut up, and listen to somebody. I'm not provoking or inciting violence or violent acts against police. I'm just saying, clearly y'all don't listen to words. And so actions might be the only way that y'all will shut the hell up and listen. You are not right. These are not right. And I want to know, like, where are the white women to sit here and condemn their husbands and their brothers and their fathers? Well, Tayla Karen over there calling the police, so can't really ask Karen to help you. I'm interested in knowing, if there's anybody watching now, I'm interested in knowing how many interracial relationships are having difficulty in this climate, and whether or not the Black person in the relationship has any type of feelings towards the white person's family. Like, is the family speaking up? Is the family speaking out? And I don't mean in the sense of putting a Black Lives Matter sign on your lawn. Like, how are you advancing racial equity financially? How are you advancing racial equity? It's weird. Like, I just wonder those dynamics in a family and in a household. So I'm here. I'm listening. Your comments are here. I'm reading them. What are your suggestions, my love? What do you suggest we do? I'll tell you my suggestions. So first and foremost, I know y'all saw that video. It took him 20 minutes to say in the beginning, and he was reading from the Bible. First and foremost, before you become a police officer, I need you to take a bias exam. So if I can take a 100 question survey, and this 100 question survey tells me what type of person I am, and tells me, how motivated I am, and what my saboteurs are, and what my strengths and my weaknesses are, and personality test, yeah, something like that. So if I'm over here taking a personality test, and you can tell me what my profession's about to be, you can tell me what type of person I am, you can tell me what color I am, you can tell me what animal I am, and my personality type, then why on earth, first and foremost, are we not giving a similar exam to police officers that ask them, like, what kind of person are you? Billy and Bob are fighting. Billy's black, Bob is white, and Bob says that Billy did XYZ. Who do you believe? Something to that effect, like real life simulations. And on top of that, on top of the written aspect, I want to see a physical aspect. I want to see you in the range. Men in Black, Will Smith. Remember when Will Smith killed the little girl? And he was just like, she the most dangerous one out there. I want to see what you do when you're under stress, under fire, and you're in this simulation. And based on the simulation, and based on the aesthetics of the simulation, how many black men you just randomly killed that looked like they were completely innocent versus the white boy walking around with her AR-15. That tells us a lot, doesn't it? And if you get an 80, you're not that biased on paper. You figured out how to answer the questions so that it doesn't reflect your racism. You passed, slightly by only killing 2 black men instead of 5, in the simulation. So you are able to scathe by, and you passed. I think, but if you don't get this, whatever these points are, you can never become a police officer, and that it's on your record. Like, first and foremost, we don't have a unified record. So if I, Tayla Andre, the officer in Boston, Massachusetts, shoot, kill, and get dismissed from my job, I could take my ass to Alabama and become a police officer. Why? Because there is no unified system that says they can call like just every other. Did Tayla work at the police department? Yeah, she did. Oh, okay. Was she terminated? Yeah, she was. Okay. Well, she's applying here. Like, there's no accountability. There's no accountability when it comes to a universal database that keeps track of the effery that you've engaged in as an officer. And I mean that in the sense of, if you pull up Tayla Andre's social security number, all my information is there. My name, my address, my birthday, all of my credit information, all of my evictions, all of my late payments, all of my, like, everything pops up. If you want, you can pull up my court documents. If you want, you can pull up my medical history. There's websites right now. If you pay $1,000, you can know everything about a Tayla Andre, and there's nothing that I can do to stop you. Yet there is no unified system that says this officer in 2019 shot someone, and this individual came back and filed an internal investigation. Pause. I just want to say really quickly that there are cases among cases of misconduct when it comes to police, and Black people we already have a culture of no snitching, right? So aside from the culture of no snitching, we also have this ideology and this belief, because systems and history have proven to us that nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to get done. Like, you can shoot a Black person in the back, still keep your job, and still feed your family, and have no repercussions to your actions. So why do I think for 5 seconds that wasting my time going to the police station, if the wrong person sees me, I'm now a snitch, because you don't know what I'm walking in there for. I have a relationship with the police. You don't know what I'm doing in there. Just like DL said yesterday, if I'm with Commissioner Gross and I take a picture, I don't even know who this man is. He's not in uniform, but it surfaces that I'm in the picture with Police Gross. And you don't know, like, the situation, I'm automatically one of the boys, part of the network. And so, and they make it difficult. Like, you can't just do it online. You can't just do it on your phone. You can't just write it in. You have to go to the police department and file an internal investigations report. And so can you imagine if we had, and I know there's civilian online databases that's just like this officer during this time did XYZ, but that's for like major offenses. But I can't think of the officer who had like, he shot a black man 2 years earlier. He killed one of us, but 2 years earlier, he shot a black man. And like 4 years earlier, there was an excessive force case brought against him. And it's just like, why are we just now in 2020 having the conversation about accountability and universal systems? I believe that if you get, 3 strikes you're out. California is like 3 strikes you're out. It could have been 3 strikes for marijuana. It could have been 3 strikes for, a domestic violence situation. It could have been like, it doesn't matter if they were violent, non-violent, 3 strikes, you're in jail for life. That it doesn't even make sense. But yeah, we don't, what was the saying? I saw a meme that was like, we denote a protest based on the most violent of the protesters, yet we don't hold accountable the police for the most violent acts that they engage in. Like, that's so biased. And so for me, it first and foremost, it's like the proper training. Like, let's weed out. And I pause again because weeding out the racist, when we know that they have infiltrated the police, they have like the court systems, they are judges, like members of the KKK, COINTELPRO. Remember that? COINTELPRO? That's what it is, COINTELPRO. We read about it yesterday. And the KKK has been infiltrated into every system out here. They are your judges. They are your police officers. They are your firefighters. When Boston firefighters have over 70% of white Americans in the firefighting field, it's annoying. It's disheartening. I'm annoyed. I want to know what solutions you have, because I have a few, and it's going to take time and it's going to take money, and you guys have to get ready, because I have demands. It don't seem like anybody else have demands. Like, everybody else just want to come together and protest. Like, it's not time to protest. These are the changes in which I want to see. I want to make sure that on paper, you're not racist and biased. I want to see you in a simulation where you're not racist and biased. I want to see you actually I want you to have body cameras so I can see all of your interactions. I want those body cameras to be released to the civilian board. I don't want on the civilian board for there to be ex-police officers. That's not a civilian, that's an ex-cop. Like, and if you're in the city of Boston, that's ex-cop, is an ex-veteran. So no, I don't want this, military mentality on this civilian review board of whether or not you took your actions too far. Aside from that, when you take your actions too far, there needs to be a universal system that denotes everything you've done. And just like if I have a late payment on my student loans, it's reported. Just like if I don't pay my bills, it's report. Like, I need everything to be reported. Everything. Somebody failed, and we need to change the system in which we report. Knowing how dangerous it is for a black man or a black woman to walk into a police station, we don't need the police station to be where you go to file a report against the police. First and foremost, we investigated ourselves and found we did nothing wrong. And Aria, did you clean your room? Yeah. And I take that as truth, and I go in there and everything looks like a tornado hit it? No. Asaria, the room's clean to you, right? Yeah. Anari, the room's clean to you. Yeah. Okay, let's go outside and play. There's no real accountability. Y'all have, it is in your, like, it is for you in your benefit to do what you want to do and to make you look good. It's in Anari's benefit for Asaria's room to be clean. It's in Asaria's benefit for Anari's room to be clean. It's in my benefit to make sure they both ain't lying to me. And so for the internal investigators to be able to police themselves like that, it just doesn't make sense. That also needs to change, not just in Boston, but across the board, period. From there, I believe police officers need to be licensed. I am a real estate agent. I had to take classes. I have to re-up and take continuing education. I just don't get a license and I'm licensed forever. But the minimal amount of education that these police officers need, like how I need a 4-year degree to sit behind a desk, but you need 6 months before you can shoot to kill people? How? Make it more difficult for people to become police officers. You have to take bias training. Even if you scored 100%, you're not biased. You didn't shoot any black people in the simulation. On paper, you're really good. You don't have any biases, or you're not racist, or your best friend is black. For some reason, that's synonymous with the two. Lord. I have a son. That doesn't mean I'm not sexist. I have 2 sons. I'm still woman power. They should be licensed, and their license should be able to be revoked at any point in time. If we're continuously seeing these, infractions against you, and people are snitching because of your behavior, then yes, the Civilian Review Board, you need to go before the Civilian Review Board, just like parolees have to go before a parole board, and tell me why you think you need to be, released, or tell me why you think these actions in which you conducted yourself and people came forward and said that this is how you treated them. Tell me why you think it is okay and acceptable for us to keep you on the force. And then based on that, we can move forward. These are simple. And this doesn't even cost a lot of money. This aspect of it, this portion of it, while you guys are over here spending millions of dollars on military gear. Please tell me, someone please tell me why Boston needs a tank. And don't tell me nothing about the Boston bombing. So aside from the Boston bombing, because they only brought out the tank because they were like, oh, shoot, we have a reason to bring out the tank. Aside from them bringing out the tank, tell me a reason why Boston police, California police need tanks. I'll wait. We can't have no moment of silence on air, but I'm waiting. Why do we need a tank? Why do they need armored trucks like they're overseas in Afghanistan? Tell me that. Hello? They don't. Tell me why they need military gear. This is not Iraq. And then I hear somebody in my telekinesis, I can hear somebody talking about, well, when you take a look at cities like Chicago, and all these people got guns and they need to protect themselves. First and foremost, if you do your due diligence and really pay attention, those guns are being dropped off in Chicago. And so I have a theory, right? And if you're in real estate, I would jump on this theory. So my theory is guns are being dropped off by this unknown X person, okay? This X entity, this X whatever. When you take a look at Boston, you remember the Forest Hills Bridge? They had a plan for Forest Hills 25 years ago. So back when I was a little thing, when I was a picnic, back when I was a thing, a little one, they already had plans on what they were going to do with Forest Hills. You don't think for 5 seconds that there's not a plan for Chicago? Like, look at where Chicago is located. Look at the history of Chicago. They are doing everything they possibly can to let them kill each other, to let them destroy one another. They're going to clear that thing out, and then all those houses that they bought up for $1 are going to resell for $550,000. Look at South End. Look at Roxbury. It is a theory. You're absolutely right. It's a theory. You know what? There's the theory of politics. That's not the reality of politics. There's a theory of life. That's not the reality of life. Yeah, everything I'm saying is all theories. Who is they? Great question. Who is they that's dropping off guns? And if you do your due diligence, go back, because I'm not spending a half hour going down the history of the man that was actually caught dropping off guns in Chicago. That's not a theory. It's a fact. He was caught dropping off a box of guns in Chicago. Don't believe me? Just Google. And so there's a lot of things that are theories, but until we try them out, it's a theory that if they take a personality test, we can figure out whether or not they're racist. It's a theory if we put them in the simulator and see how many black people they kill versus white people under pressure. Those are all theories. Let's put them into practice and see if it works, because what we're doing right now doesn't. I am a vehicle on ICE, Oreo. We ain't Syria, Iraq, or any of the other places that are blowing things up. Not yet. And hopefully not never. Not never. I remember being a little kid, a little kid. I remember being 8 or 9 years old and thanking God for where I lived. And it's crazy because all of my uncles watch country westerns and documentaries when it comes to war, because I have a lot of veterans in my family. So I grew up seeing all of this war and famine and destruction and violence. And so I was just I thank God that that's not my reality, that it's something that I'm just seeing on TV or tapes, VHS back in the day. That's something that I'm just watching, and that's something I'm not living, and just being appreciative that that's not where we are. And so we aren't there, right? But the more we have access to video and people are uploading not theories but reality, we see that these systems that have been in place have not worked for us. And they're not working for us as in the US. We're losing respect as the superpower in the world because of how we handle our citizens. What makes us any different than Yamin? What makes us any different than Gaddafi? What makes us any different than these dictators, outside of the fact that it's not one individual, one dictator giving permission for these atrocities? In a sense, the dictator is the police department with multiple heads. And so, you know what? It is a real life dictatorship. The police are the dictators. They are the executioners. They are the jury. They are the, from beginning to end. They determine whether or not you deserve to live or die. And I don't care what a criminal did. Blow up the World Trade. The McVeigh blew up an entire building and was captured. The gentleman who went to church and killed dozens of people in church was captured. Wasn't that was the little boy that was taking a Burger King, right? How, tell me the theory of that. Explain to me the theory of that. I'm gonna get into some news really quickly, because you over here asking me who that they are, and you frustrating the life out of me. It don't need to be they. It's probably George Soros. I don't care who it is. It's somebody. I know they aren't black people just crossing lines to get a gun, to just have a gun. And if you know anything about gang culture, if you know anything about street culture, I'm not a part of the streets. I'm not a part of the gang, but I know enough to speak and to understand that if somebody threatened my life, and if someone threatened my uncle's life, like if there's beef going on the higher level where my uncles and cousins are beefing with one neighborhood or with one street or with one other gang, then by affiliation, I too am under attack. So never is it okay for you to have a gun for protection and you're not a licensed gun holder. But we also have to acknowledge and admit that there are real dangers out here for young Black men living in the ghetto. Well, why don't they move out of the ghetto? The same reason why your ass live where you live, because that's where you can afford. On top of the historic theories, facts that look at redlining, like just look at history. That's all you have to do is look at history. Black people don't live in ghettos because that's where they want to live, because that's what's popping, because that's the lifestyle that they choose, that's the culture that they want. It's not. When you have a president who just said, hey, yo, listen, white women in America, I'm going to make your neighborhood safe so you don't have low-income people. That's like blatant racism. Because who's low income? Even though there's millions of white people that are poor, low income automatically, just like welfare automatically, is associated to people of color. Federal investigators launched a civil rights probe into the Jacob Blake shooting. The police officer who shot him 7 times in the back has been identified and placed under administrative leave, which means he still gets to feed his family by way of a paycheck. Sunday's police shooting of a 29-year-old father of 5 has now prompted a civil rights probe by the federal government. The investigation will be led by the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation and the FBI. According to the U.S. Attorney Office for Eastern District of Wisconsin, it will be overseen by prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the criminal section of the Civil Rights Division. And so they wrote a statement and they said federal law enforcement is joined with the state and local authorities to address further violence in Kenosha and beyond. Federal law imposes stiff penalties for arson, rioting, firearm offenses, and other violent crimes. Now, I want to pause right there because federal law imposes stiff penalties for firearm offenses. But in the video that I saw of the militia with guns, not one person was asked for their gun license. Not one. They were actually given water. They were told good job, that they were appreciated, and they were given thanks. The officer that shot Blake, as you guys may already know, is Rustin Shesky, who was employed by the department for 7 years. One of the things that I've been looking into and have not been able to find, and if you have, please share it, is whether or not he has any offenses from the past. And I think that's important because, again, if people have already complained about your behavior, then this is nothing new. This is how you conduct yourself. Fox News host Tucker Carlson says the teen who shot protesters was doing nothing more but maintaining order. And of course, like he always says something like ridiculous and off the wall and absolutely insane. But this one, I think, is like, I'm surprised he still has a job after this one. But you know, they love that dumbness. in the they, I mean the powers that be that allow on television for Carlson to say this nonsense, but then shut down a Keke Palmer, shut down like the powers that be that control entertainment. And if you don't know, back when I was born, there were 50 plus, like 75 plus different organizations that contributed to media, that contributed to like Time Warner Cable, that contributed to newspapers. Right now we have six. We have six individuals, six people, not six corporations, six people that outside of social media, and you might even want to say seven, because now with all of the censoring that's happening on Facebook, you might want to add Mark Zuckerberg to that list. But there are seven people, not organizations, but people that dictate and determine what you receive as news or receive as media, period. And I know Ice Cube and a host of other Black entertainers are pooling their money together to purchase a couple networks. And so I really hope that takes place. Mind you, the networks that they're looking to purchase were the same networks that Bill Cosby was looking to purchase. But I'm just really excited that this group that's looking to purchase is not just one person that they could attack personally, but a group of individuals that, you know, united we stand type situation. And so Tucker Carlson can, I have choice words, but they are not appropriate for air. Tucker Carlson said, "How shocked are we that 17-year-olds with rifles decide they had to maintain order when no one else would?" And that Kyle Rittenhouse, 17 years old, who was charged with first-degree murder in the deaths of two men. Those two men have not yet been identified, but that he was doing nothing more but upholding order. If you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything you think you know will only confuse you. And that's from Truth Understanding. And I do understand white supremacy, and I do understand the powers that be and the systems and how they were created, why they were created, and how they were never built for us. I get that. That's nothing new. But I'm about like, what can we do next? What's next? We have power now. We have money now. We can read now. We can move. I was going to say we can move throughout society, but we really can't. Shout out to the Trump supporter that is currently watching on Periscope. I appreciate you as well. Blacks are being left behind. White, Hispanics, and Asians are moving forward. And this is from Ice City Train on Periscope. He said a gun license. I was serious. Like, if the federal offense is really like buckling down on gun offenses, then, you know, why weren't the militia asked for their gun license? Period. That's not a hard question to ask. They would told, thank you, good job, we appreciate you. The Biden campaign launches a Shop Talk series of roundtable discussions for and about Black men. This Shop Talk roundtable is being hosted by Black Men for Biden, and it's featuring Rep. Cedric Richmond, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, Jermaine Dupree, Terrence J., and Chuck Creamer. My problem with this is, please tell me, please explain to me what Jermaine Dupree and Terrence J. have to do with anything social justice. And this is one of the problems that I have with a lot of these conversations that are being had. And so as a media personality, it would be amazing for me to maybe moderate one of these conversations, but to actually be a part of the conversation when I truly do not have any expertise when it comes to police reform, criminal justice reform. Like, I'm not an attorney. I have no I'm not a judge. Like, I have no understanding of I have no complete understanding in the professional sense of these things, right? I'm not a police officer. I am not a politician. I am not. So even though it would be amazing for me to be on one of these panels, like a Terrence J, to be on one of these panels, that's great. But at the end of the day, I don't have any true expertise to bring to the table. So why is like, and I'm not hating on Terrence J. I'm not hating on Jermaine Dupri, but these are two men that in a sense can be considered millionaires that don't live a life that someone who lives, like they live in suburbia. They don't live in the hood. They don't live in these places where they're watching like the actual proximity. They are no longer in proximity. Maybe Jermaine Dupri 25, 30 years ago, he was in proximity, but as a multi-millionaire that makes music, that lives in the suburbs, where is his expertise? And these are featuring them, like a conversation featuring these men. What about, so in Chicago, there's this group, I cannot think of their name for the life of me, but they are policing the streets. Like they, black men and women, drive around at night, policing the streets, keeping people safe, being part of mediation conversations, and like diffusing what could be violent acts. Why aren't these men and women part of the conversation? Why are former gang members turned advocates and activists not part of the conversation? I don't think we need entertainers to be part of a conversation when their proximity is so far from realities for people. And black men for Biden should be speaking to black men who live in neighborhoods where Biden's policies and legislation is going to affect them. And I say that to say, once you make a certain amount of money, politics really doesn't like affect you at all. I think it was one of Jay-Z's lines. It was just like, I make so money, like politics doesn't, like that ish doesn't do nothing for me. And so once you make so much money, it doesn't matter what legislation says about healthcare. You got it. It doesn't matter what legislation says about any type of social programs or social services. You got it. It doesn't matter what legislation comes out around reform or education, because your kids have a nanny and are in private school and have tutors. Like there's a certain level of quote unquote financial success that you have reached where politics doesn't even reach you. It matters not. So why not have conversations with people that are actually living the experience where your legislative alterations are going to directly affect me, my family, my life, my finances? But at least the conversation is being had, and so I will not take away from that. I am excited about that conversation. Joe Biden posted on Twitter, once again, a black man, Jacob Blake, was shot by police in front of his children. It makes me sick. Is this the country we want to be? Needless violence won't heal us. We need to end violence and peacefully come together and demand justice. He also tweeted, this moment demands moral leadership, and these players answered by standing up, speaking out, and using their platform for good. Now it's time for silence, in response to the Milwaukee Bucks, saying that they're not playing. Like, nah, we're not about that life. And I really do appreciate all of the players and the teams and the owners and the managers and Doc, who is like, yo, they don't love us. They don't love us. And Doc, you're absolutely right. They don't love us. But you don't have to love me, but what you are going to do is respect me and respect my life. And that's the difference between why Blake was shot in the back 7 times and why the white 17-year-old with an AR-15 was captured and probably fed Burger King and then brought into the station without bruises, without a black eye, with his breath in his lungs. It's because of respect. And so you don't have to like me, you don't have to love me, but what you are going to do is respect me. And so at the end of the day, how do we demand, and not just demand, but receive the respect we deserve as humans when not too long ago we were chattel and no different than property being sold for interstate commerce? In other news, Wells Fargo to pay almost $8 million in hiring bias. So recently, I came out with a book, and in this book, I have a bunch of information, but I began the book with the history of real estate, period. For women, that we go through, like, when women couldn't own property, when women had to go through their husbands in order to purchase property, when a woman had to ask her brother or her father to purchase a property, for her, even though it was in his name, even though he was a bum and had no money. Like, I'm just being mad right now, right? Even though he wasn't the one actually purchasing it, once upon a time, a woman could not purchase land, be a homeowner, a landlord, a landowner. And if her husband were to pass away, the land would then go to the son. And if the son didn't, then it would go to the state. Like, it was like, we don't care about you, even though that was your husband, this land doesn't belong to you. But we also went through the history of Native Americans, Asians, and Black people when it came to real estate. And one of the things I ended the chapter with is, even though all of this happened in the past, it's still 2020, and Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and a host of other banks are still engaging in racial bias practices. And, work is no different, even though the conversation was more along the lines of financing and pathways to home ownership. Wells Fargo is to pay $8 million in a hiring bias. And, I think these numbers are minuscule, because let me tell you, I personally want $8 million for me. Like, forget the other, what is it? 34,100 Black applicants for banking, customer service, and administrative support positions. Nah, what's 34,000 divided by 8 million? And it's not even 8 million, it's 7.8 million. And if y'all don't know, my math sucks unless we're talking about child support, and we're not. So I'm about to use this calculator real quick. So we'll just say 8 million, right? So 8 million, and how many was it? 34,000. That's approximately like $100,000 per person, with the greater of them receiving up to $235,000. No, thank you. I want all $8 million, please, and I appreciate you. Why? Period. Absolutely, period. Because that's what you got to hit them where it hurts. And it doesn't hurt. $8 million doesn't hurt you. $8 million doesn't hurt us, like a single bank, let alone the entire establishment. So you're still going to do what you're going to do, because $8 million is nothing. I'm going to pay that little fine. I'm going to pay that little fee. And first of all, you had to come out of pocket to pay the attorneys for the class action suit to begin with. So aside from the class action suit, you first had to find me guilty. So I'm going to pay this $8 million, which is like 8 pennies. And then I'm going to continue to engage in these practices. And then you have to prove that I did it again. What is that? Another 10 years? They're going to be like, oh, we gave them $16 million to another 64,000 people that we racially profiled. The bank alleges discrimination against more than 34,100 Black applicants for banking, customer sales and service, and administrative support positions. The company also discriminated against 308 female applicants for administrative support positions. The San Francisco-based bank did not admit wrongdoing. Look at my face. Did not admit wrongdoing, according to the agency, but will enter into an enhanced compliant agreement whereby the agency agrees to proactive future monitoring internally. We we internally investigated ourselves and found we did nothing wrong. Wells Fargo will also extend 580 job offers to applicants affected by the alleged bias. That 580 out of 34,000. Again, I'm not good with math. Who knows those numbers? That's like the 0.8% of the 8 cents. That's what that is. 0.8%. Wells Fargo has settled discrimination claims with the agency at least twice in the past. I'm gonna pay these couple dollars and then I'm gonna pay these 8 pennies and then I'm gonna continue doing what I'm doing, because the last 2 times it was not effective. But if you're giving $8 million to 34,000 people, oh, that's gonna hit you in your pocket. You're gonna start acting different. You're gonna make sure that you're not being biased and you're not being racist, because I'm not trying to lose this 8 million times 34,000. So that $8 million is not enough for me. Tayla, you just being greedy. Hell yeah. Hit them where it hurts. And that's exactly why one of the parts that I didn't finish regarding police is just like doctors have to get a license and have to get insurance. And if I become a broker, a real estate broker, I have to get insurance in case any of my agents do anything stupid. The insurance will pay for it. If you're a business owner, you have to have insurance. If you own a brick and mortar, you have to have insurance. If you supply services to people, you have to have insurance. I just applied to have the book Finally Home at Walmart and Target, and they asked me about my insurance information. I'm a freaking author. Insurance for what? But yet a police officer don't need to have insurance. A doctor does. So how about you personally, when you shoot somebody, when someone sues you, they're not suing the police department, they suing your ass. I bet you'll act a little differently out in these streets now. Wells Fargo settled discrimination claims with the agency at least twice in the past, including just last year. The bank paid $600,000 to settle claims of race and sex-based hiring bias claims. In 2015, Wells Fargo settled bias allegations for not providing accommodations to an applicant with a disability. A year later, the bank was fined $100 million for widespread illegal practices of secretly open unauthorized accounts. The order also required the bank to pay an estimated $2.5 million in refunds to customers. The agreement with the OFCCP relates to its routine review of hiring data from 6 to 10 years ago in small numbers of U.S. geographies. Wells Fargo spokesperson told Bloomberg in an email, the review found lower selections for African Americans for some tellers, customer service, and personal and phone banker positions, while Hispanics were generally the group with the highest selection rate, reflecting the needs for Spanish language skills for certain customer-facing roles. We just gonna leave that right there. So they said 100 million plus this 8 million plus that 600,000 plus that 14 million, which still wasn't hard enough to hit those pockets for them to actually change their practices when it was just last year. But again, they didn't even say, they didn't admit to any wrongdoing. They just entered into an agreement that moving forward we'll do things differently, when in the past your ass still didn't do it. So how am I supposed to trust you? So I hope that they're still under intense scrutiny and under review by somebody else that's not internally telling them they did absolutely nothing wrong. So I want to big up, we've been talking to like all of this down and depressing news. I want to big up Michelle Obama's vote necklace was made by a Jamaican designer, and that's super exciting. A report by Laura Zanosa for the Los Angeles Times brings to their attention during Tuesday afternoon's interview with Michelle Obama. You can see that she has a necklace that says vote, and it's really, really small. It's like this gold rope that has the VOTE spaced out a little bit, and it looks dope. Somebody should have definitely fixed it on her. You can see the Biden in the background. I thought that was funny. And really quickly, if you took a look at Elizabeth Warren speech on the right-hand side, you would see like BLM, like Black Lives Matter, but in like school-aged block letters. Hold on 1 minute. Can somebody please close the door? Thank you. Layered atop her pale dress were at least 2 sets of hoops, a cuff earring, and a necklace, 5 bracelets, and 2 handfuls of rings. And she woke up like this. She did not, however, make up Monday morning, knowing that Michelle Obama would wear her vote necklace to speak at the Democratic National Convention that night. She did not wake up knowing that her jewelry line, Bychari, Bychari, would sell 4,000 pieces at $295 each in 2 days. On a normal day, her 7-woman team would receive around 200 orders. The best way I can put it, she said, it's everything that we've worked for. It's everything that we've worked for happening in 1 day in 24 hours. And that's when, you know when they say like this, it didn't happen overnight. Like you put the work in, you put the work in, you put the work in, and then you hit that pinnacle. And so shout out, please shout out to this young lady. Again, if you want to go to her website, it is Bychari. If I butchered that, please correct me. I'm always willing to learn. But I am taking a look at her website now. What is this.com? And it came out, I spelled it wrong and it just came out. So her vote necklace on the website is $295, but you can find it as low as $70, but it's not by her. Somebody else copied it, and I wouldn't be surprised if you could find it on Amazon for $39.99 in a week. It is really cute though, and you can pick different colors, you can pick different materials, you can actually do a layaway for interest-free installments of $73.75. And you can pick like a 14 karat yellow gold, you can pick a 14 karat rose gold, or a 14 karat white gold. And then depending on how many letters you have, or the 16-inch with a 14-inch option, an 18-inch with a 16-inch option, or a 20-inch with an 18-inch option. And from what I understand, like it's layered. So the first one is 16-inch, and then 2 layers, and then a layer up, or 2 inches up is the other layer. I think it's cute. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks for it to be produced. And you can also add diamonds to it. And so shout out Bychari, Bychari.com for the vote necklace. But she, first and foremost, like even if you're not in it for the vote necklace, she is a Black jewelry designer with 14 karat gold, white, regular gold, and rose gold. So I think that's dope. Big up to her. Olympic hero Usain Bolt has tested positive for coronavirus. Keep him in our prayers. We do know that sports athletes, or athletes in general that contract coronavirus, are not, like, their lungs don't reach capacity. Like even though they're healed, like let's say for instance, he caught coronavirus yesterday. It takes him 2 weeks. He's fully healed, fully recovered. His lungs, what we've seen in the past, athletes' lungs are not at the fullest extent that they were prior to corona. And so we're seeing a lot of post-corona effects on athletes. And I am only guessing, because this is a theory. Shout out to my Trump supporters over here theorizing me. But it is a theory that is how the corona will be affecting everyone who contract the virus. I'm over here remembering the senator who said, we just need to send everybody back to school and whoever dies, dies, and everyone can just, everyone needs to get corona so we can get over this. I don't know why I was thinking about that, but it just came to mind. Truth and understanding, Black people need a code of conduct that we all need to follow. Truth and understanding, I just want to say to you that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be awesome if we had Black codes and actually abided by them? Because once upon a time, I remember there were street codes, and street codes means you don't kill women or children, but yet that is not what is taking place today. There were street codes where you conducted yourself a little differently in your movements, but those are not being conducted today. These young boys have absolutely no respect for the street codes of the past. And so I'm honestly, truth and understanding, please tell me how you think we can enact these things. How do we make these things, like how? We can't even get Black people on one page when it comes to the electric slide. Everybody want to do their own direction. I'm being an ass, but I'm serious. Like, how are we going to be on one accord when we don't vote for one another? We don't support one another. We could have a Black brother or sister that just opened a business and we won't patronize that business. We won't, support it. We won't like it. We won't share it, but we'll talk about the person and all of their flaws and everything that they did and didn't do and how they, think they're all that because they got a little business. So please help me understand how would we do that? In other news, Kenosha police chief blames protesters for their own deaths because they were out after curfew. And so this goes to the whole victim blaming culture, which we as a society tend to do. We victim blame those that were raped because you had a skirt on. We victim blame those that were robbed because they have nice possessions. We victim blame Black people because they're Black. Like, we victim blame all the time. So Kenosha's police chief, Daniel Miskins, is no different. I just want him to put on his MAGA hat so we can keep it moving. And you know what? I'm going to take a minute and think about what DL said yesterday. So yesterday we had on air DL, who is not just an artist, but a local activist and advocate here in Boston, along with James Mackey for the Enough is Enough press conference happening tomorrow at 3:30. And he was talking about taking a very different approach, because you have to acknowledge that people need to take self-inventory. You have to take accountability for your actions, and regardless of what you're a grown-up. Hold yourself accountable, but we also need to hold each other accountable. And so I'm thinking they were out after curfew. Okay, I get that. There was a curfew in place and they broke curfew. But does that mean they should die? And that goes back to the first thing that I said when we opened up the show earlier, was I don't care if you killed someone, you still deserve your day in court. I don't care if you beat somebody, you still deserve your day in court. I don't care if you raped somebody, you still deserve your day in court. I, as a victim, I want my day in court. I want to be able to be there to sit and to point and say, yeah, you did it, and for the consequences to lead to some sort of justice. I don't think that murder is the answer, because, I need you to understand what it is that you did and how it affected me. And how are you going to alter your actions in the future to ensure that something like this does not happen again? And so regardless of what any Black person does, it is never okay for that action to beget being murdered. They deserve their day in court. Pennsylvania governor wants to legalize marijuana to help with COVID-19 recovery acts. The Pennsylvania Democratic Governor, Tom Wolf, included marijuana legalization as part of his legislative agenda for the state COVID-19 economic recovery plan. Governor Wolf has asked the state legislature to work towards legalization of marijuana. And in the press release outlining his proposed plan, states that 50% of marijuana sales be directed towards historically disadvantaged businesses, while a smaller amount will go towards grants for small businesses. Wolf also requests that some of the potential funds go towards further restorative justice programs that give priority to repairing the harm done by crime victims in communities as a result of marijuana criminalization. This is beautiful, like restorative justice at its finest. Do you know how many Black men are in jail right now? Black men and Black women that are in jail today because they were, what Biggie say? I was just on a corner trying to make some money to feed my daughter. And that's exactly what they were doing. And now we have white billionaires that are making money hand over fist doing the same thing that corner boys were doing. And so this is a beautiful restorative justice action. And I thank Governor Wolf. I'm so grateful for him. But I also want to see this across the nation. Like, this needs to be on a federal level. The federal government needs to admit that they effed up. Joe Biden needs to admit that he effed up. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and a host of other Republicans, Democrats, and independents need to admit that they messed up and over criminalizing a natural plant in its natural state being sold for a natural high that created people that got the munchies and were sleepy and did not commit any violent acts, but were instead criminalized for this thing that is now being monetized by a completely different demographic. A Black child was slapped, called racist slur by a white woman in Florida, and most likely nothing will happen to her. Today on the episode of White People Are Wilding Out, it takes us to Florida. And when I tell you, like, 90% of the insane articles that I have read over the last decade, Florida is number one. Like, I don't know what's going on with the sunshine. I don't know what's in the water, but Florida is crazy when it comes. Y'all remember the man who was eating other man's face? Bath salts, all that nonsense happens in Florida. I don't know what's going on, but it's crazy that Florida is just wilding out all the time. So there was a white woman that was arrested after slapping a Black child and called him a racial slur. Why? Well, because their go-karts bumped into each other. Well, bitch, when you go-karting, that's what is to be expected. The 30-year-old Haley Zager was driving go-karts at Boomer's Amusement Park in Boca Raton, I may have butchered that, when an 11-year-old child, thank you to this news article who referred to him as a child, because our 11-year-olds, Black boys, Black girls, are over-sexualized, I don't know if over-aged is a thing, but there are scientific studies that prove that young Black boys and girls are treated as if they are 5 to 7 years older than they are. And so this 11-year-old child accidentally crashed into her. And after the attraction was finished, they finished the go-kart, she confronted the boy and slapped him in the face in front of 3 Boomers employees. And I bet you they stood there and was like, oh. She then used racial slurs to justify her actions. To those who witnessed the slap, the child suffered from a swollen eye due to the strike, and I'm surprised Mama didn't go to jail, because I dare you to hit my child, and I'm not the one going. We both going to jail, because I'm gonna whoop your ass just like you thought it was okay to whoop my son's ass. Period. She exactly. So whoever wrote this article was like, wait, hold on, she wasn't beaten. I should be reading what happened to her. The wildest part about the whole story is that she used the racial slurs to defend herself. It's really bad enough that she slapped the child she probably didn't even know. The fact that she was like, how can I make this better? Oh, I know, racism. No. And I really was looking for this article because I was trying to figure out, like, how was the language, like, how was it used? Like, oh, I slapped him because he was an N-word. Like, I've really been looking for how this was broken down and how it took place. I want to give a huge shout out to Cardi B, because Cardi B is on it. I'm ready for Cardi B to run for something. What's Cardi running for? Cardi B on the RNC speaker comparing her to Melania. How do you say the girl name? Mrs. Trump, First Lady Trump. So she said, what was said was, there needs to be more women. America needs far more women like Melania. Melanie. How you say the girl name? Melania. You know I can't speak English for real. And far less women like Cardi B. And Cardi B was like, but pause though, because didn't she used to sell that WAP? And technically, she was a nudist. Like, she was naked. And there are T-shirts with her naked. There are photos with her naked. She's like the only first lady that was naked ever, to be actually all over the place. And Cardi B posted a picture, the picture of First Lady Trump when she was naked. And she said, this picture is giving me, yeah, you effing with some WAP vibes. I'm just saying. And I think that's hilarious. Why? Because Deanna Lorraine said America needs more women like First Lady Trump than Cardi B. And Cardi B is out here speaking against injustice while the First Lady married injustice. So I'm just saying. Interracial couple. I reported this yesterday just to speak about the story, but now I would actually like to read the story to you before we come offline. Interracial couple's home receives higher appraisal after removing all signs of blackness from the house. This is an interracial couple. The wife is black, the husband is white, and in the house they had, you know, black people and black children, and the wife is black. And so I can imagine, aside from just having black things, they probably had some African memorabilia on the wall, some kente cloth. Like, clearly my house is very different than Karen's house. You can tell my house is different from Karen's house by the things that I have, the candles that I have, the photos that I have. Like, it's clear, it's easy, right? The interracial couple in Jacksonville, Florida, found out in July just how discriminatory practices in the housing market can be when the appraisal on their home came in more than $100,000 below expectations one day, and then 40% higher another day. What was the difference between the two appraisers? The first one was done while a black woman was at the house, while the other one was done while her white husband was home. She said, my heart kind of broke. I know what the issue was. I knew what I needed to do to fix it, because in the black community, it's just common knowledge that you take your pictures down when selling your house. But I didn't think I had to worry about that in the appraisal. This comes from the New York Times. The Hortons live just minutes from the Ortega River in a predominantly white neighborhood of the 1950s homes that tend to sell for $350,000 to $550,000. They expected their home to appraise at around $450,000, but the appraiser felt differently, assigning a value of $330,000. Mind you, let's go back. The 1950 homes that tend to sell for $350,000 to $550,000. So even the appraiser brought it down an additional $20,000 from the average price that these houses are being sold. Miss Horton, who is black, immediately suspected discrimination. The couple's bank agreed that the value was off and ordered a second appraisal. But before the new appraiser could arrive, Miss Horton, who is also an attorney, began an experiment. She took down all of her family photos off the mantle. Instead, she hung up a series of oil paintings of Mr. Horton, who is white, and his grandparents held in storage. She said that we took down all the pictures of African-American greats that we displayed to inspire our son. What I told you, my house looked very different than Karen's house. Zora Neale Hurston, Toni Morrison came off the bookshelves. Instead, we put up Shakespeare. My son and I took a convenient shopping trip during the appraisal, leaving my white male husband to show the appraiser around alone. She also mentioned that the original appraiser came by and he was immediately unpleasant, making one rude comment after another. He expressed exaggerated surprise when he saw me working at my home office during the walkthrough. Predictably, the couple's second appraisal went differently. With Alex gone from the home and the husband walking the appraiser around, the new couple's value came in at $465,000. Again, the original appraisal was for $320,000. And so this just goes to show, as a real estate agent, this is nothing new to me. Again, if you read the book Finally Home that I wrote, the first chapter is about the history. And even though it's over 150 years of real estate history, we hit 2020, and at 2020 we realized and recognized, hence Wells Fargo's article that I just read, that discriminatory practices are still taking place even today. And so even though there are 1,000,001 stories that I would love to read to you, there is so much going on in the world. We do have to go. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope you guys have an amazing day. I am Tayla Andre. This is Spark FM Online. You can find me everywhere, Tayla Andre, at TaylaAndre. Did I just forget my name? It's TaylaAndre.com, and that is everything Tayla made. There's merchandise on there if you want some tailor-made merchandise. There's, if you're looking to buy or sell a property, there's my real estate services on the website. There's also, if you need credit cleanup, there's credit cleanup services on the website. Anything and everything that you need regarding a Tayla Andre is on the website, TaylaAndre. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Keep it locked to Spark FM Online for some of the best music, up-to-date news, and the best personalities the city of Boston has to offer. Mwah.